Hans Olsen, Scott Gerard, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We have all been patiently waiting for Game 1 of the Stanley Cup. It is a rematch, Edmonton and Florida, and helping us break down the Florida Panthers as they get set to repeat. Covering the Panthers for the Hockey News, David Dwork, kind enough to join us. David, how are you?
Hey, David.
I'm doing good, fellas. Thank you so much for having me on.
Hey, we're excited. As we here in Salt Lake City have been learning and trying to figure out the hockey thing and loving every second of it, we cannot wait for this Game 1 tonight between two teams that you get a sense don't really like each other very much. You throw in America versus Canada. You bring in the two best offensive players against the defensive juggernaut. Just from your perspective, a guy who enjoys the game as much as you do, how much fun should this series be?
It's hard to quantify based off of last year's final, which was, people are saying it's one of the best finals ever. Certainly it was a great Game 7, the way that it was, Florida went up 3-0, then Edmonton came back in pretty convincing fashion. So I think the excitement level couldn't be any higher. It's pretty cool that despite the fact that we get a rematch, you could argue that both teams are a lot better than they were last year. Certainly Edmonton has beefed up a bit. They play a more tighter defensive game, a little bit more physical. Florida has added to their depth. They've been able to bring back, recoup talent on the blue line after losing some pretty significant pieces in the offseason. And, both goaltenders are playing really well right now entering the final. There's just so many boxes that are being checked that I'm totally in agreement with you that I just cannot wait for the series to get started.
Hey, David, we go back to the 24th series between these two teams, and I was going through this with Scotty Bobrovsky. Well, Florida gave up 23 goals through that series, and Edmonton gave up 18. But there was the stretch, the three-game stretch, where Edmonton came back from an 0-3 and squared it up 3-3. And in that stretch, Florida gave up 18 goals in that stretch. What happened in that three-game stretch where Edmonton got back in that series?
A year later, I think we're still trying to figure out exactly what went wrong for Florida. Edmonton, they stretched out Florida's D a bit more. They were able to exploit what Florida had been doing really well to that point, and really throughout the last 3 years under Paul Maurice, and that's keep their gap control really tight. Edmonton was able to get through the neutral zone a bit more, use their speed to their advantage. We saw a lot of breakaway goals on Sergei Bobrovsky. I think at one point in the final he gave up 5 or 6 straight breakaway goals against the Oilers heading into Game 7. So they were able to really exploit something that Florida has been able to be pretty dominant with, and that's their defensive structure. That, and as you mentioned, 18 goals in the 3 games. I remember going to Game 4 in Edmonton when Florida was up in the series 3-0, and Edmonton won, I think it was like 8-1 or something that night. And it just felt like it was a completely different series than we had been watching for the first 3 games. And then to have it play out the way you said with Edmonton winning those 3 straight games in such convincing fashion, I didn't know what to expect heading into Game 7 in Sunrise last year. I just remember I wasn't in a particularly great mood because of how everything had happened with the travel and everything that had gone on the last week prior. But for the rematch, it just couldn't be more excited to see how it plays out, just because we've got 2 amazingly talented teams. And I think building off of what happened last year, Edmonton, they weren't a great defensive team. They shored up their defense a lot. Florida is able to add a little bit more scoring punch. Both teams just incredibly strong in the back line this year. So it's been interesting watching the adjustments, and now we're getting to see how it kind of plays out over hopefully 7 games, but a long series either way.
When you've watched Florida, whether it's this playoff or playoffs in the past, just the style in which they play and the level of physicality, have you seen it just frankly break teams' will to live? Like, it just seems like there's teams out there that are like, we don't want to do this with these guys anymore. We're done.
Yeah, that's putting it pretty well into what Florida wants to do to teams, tries to do to teams. They're just going to pound you, and they're going to be so physical. And during the regular season, by the time the third period rolls around, that's why Florida's been so good, because teams just don't want to keep dealing with it. They don't want to keep going below their own goal line and getting crunched every time. And Florida, they've become this amazing, like almost throwback of a playoff team where they're going to be physical. You know that you're going to get hit in the face, but they're also got this amazing high-end amount of skill that general manager Bill Zito has been able to bring together. So I can imagine the frustration level has to be high for teams facing Florida. And you talk to a guy like Brad Marchand, who got a front row seat to it 2 out of the last 3 playoff years. Now he decides to come to Florida and be a part of it. So it's cool what they've been able to do. It's pretty unique, and it's going to be curious to see if Edmonton has an answer for it this year.
So tell Utah Mammoth fans what they can expect when Sam Bennett shows up here at the Mammoth. We're hoping to see Sam Bennett come this way into Utah.
No, I wouldn't blame you. I think Sam Bennett, the way that he's been able to kind of show what he can do from a two-way standpoint since he arrived in South Florida, especially when you think about kind of how the first few years of his career went in Calgary. It's been pretty amazing, the turnaround that he's been able to do and just show how valuable of a player he can be both on and off the ice. But the combination of physicality that he brings to the table combined with the speed and the overall skill that he has with his hands, with his incredibly accurate shot, there's just a lot of things that Sam Bennett does so well for the Panthers. It's going to be curious to see if the Panthers let him go, because I do think the style of play that Paul Maurice has brought to the Panthers, Sam Bennett really personifies that better than almost anybody that you could think of, just in terms of combining defensive play, physicality, and skill. So it's going to be curious to see if he does hit free agency. I imagine if that day does arrive, he's going to get a lot of money thrown at him. But I thought the same would happen to guys like Gus Forsling, Carter Verhaeghe, and Sam Reinhart. And Bill Zito's been able to keep them all around on team-friendly deals. So it'll be fun to see how it plays out over the next month or so.
With that being said, what ignited kind of the thought that Bennett might be on that market and might be headed out? Is that just him trying to leverage Florida for more money?
I think the storyline behind him possibly hitting free agency is just he's a UFA, and that's what people are writing about. Sam Bennett, he hasn't spoken a lot about it, but he hasn't said anything outside of wanting to stay in Florida, wanting to get a deal done with the Panthers. Just as UFA Aaron Ekblad has said very much the same things about wanting to stick around with Florida. So I think that's more of like what we in the media will do. Well, the guy's going to be a free agent. He can fit in a lot of places. They're going to want him. He's got championship pedigree. He does so many different things right. But from what we've heard from Bennett's camp particularly, it's just been talking to Florida, wanting to get a deal done. And that's what you would expect because he still is under contract with the Panthers. So I wouldn't think he'd be talking about much else until potentially, 2-3 weeks from now.
So if you look into the crystal ball, this is your opinion only, and we won't hold you to it. Do you think he hits the free agent market?
No, I think that Bill Zito finds a way to keep him and Aaron Ekblad. Honestly, I'd be surprised if him, Ekblad, and Brad Marchand all don't find a way to stick around in South Florida. The way that these guys are very much team-oriented, the way that they want to be in this culture, they want to be part of what is being built. We've seen so many guys, the guys I mentioned before, but Barkov, Tkachuk, so many guys would be making more money on the open market than what they've taken from Bill Zito. So I'd be surprised if, your question was Bennett particularly, but Florida, the way that they've built and they've got these guys that are such good fits, it'll be interesting to see if they let them go. But if you put a gun to my head, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that they all stick around.
So Scotty was just reading a story about how Matthew Tkachuk is claiming that Florida is way behind the ball and that Edmonton is the giant and Florida is just this little ant that's trying to find its way.
David versus Goliath.
All of this stuff. I'm sure you've heard some of the things that Matthew Tkachuk is trying to throw out there. What is his effort with some of his statements recently?
I think he's just trying to have fun with everything in the situation that he finds himself in. The Panthers, this is their third year in the final, not Edmonton back-to-back years. So they kind of understand what's coming with the media day, and with all the attention that's going to come with it. So I don't think Matthew is trying to do anything malicious or anything like, super controversial. I think he's probably making these comments more tongue-in-cheek than anything else. But at the end of the day, like that's kind of what makes Matthew Tkachuk such a unicorn and such a unique guy, is that he's got all the skill in the world. He can score 40 goals, but he's still such a throwback. And both him and his brother Brady, and obviously they must have gotten a lot of that from their dad Keith Tkachuk, because that's the kind of player that he was. So it's really cool to see kind of this old age type of player dropped into the current NHL landscape, and the results are usually it's pretty entertaining.
Based on what they've done in the past and what you expect in the future, what's the game plan for Connor McDavid?
Try your best to slow him down and hope that he doesn't kick your butt. When it comes to Connor McDavid, it's one of the hardest players, fastest player, skilled player. He's one of the hardest guys to contain. I think Florida's going to lean very much on their 5-man defensive game, try to keep a tight gap around him, try to limit his space and opportunities as best you can. But I mean, as we've seen, throughout his career, definitely during last year's final, you cannot contain a guy like Connor McDavid. It's amazing enough that Florida was able to hold Leon Draisaitl without a goal for 7 games last year. But the idea of trying to contain a guy like McDavid it's almost silly. to game plan around it. So you have to, if you're Florida, I think, you just have to lean on what you do incredibly well, maybe play a little bit of the matchup game. I would imagine you're either going to see Sasha Barkov or Anton Lundell's line against them as much as you can. But again, on the road, that's not always the easiest thing to do. So you just kind of throw a wet blanket on it and hope for the best.
How incredible is Big Baller Bob in the net for you guys? He had the shutout against Carolina. I think he had one against Toronto. Did he have one against Tampa Bay? I thought he did have one shutout against. Is he got 3 shutouts already in the postseason? Is that right?
Yeah, I think he's got one in each round, and it's just incredibly consistent from Sergei Bobrovsky. I mean, even though he had a little, he wavered a little bit at the beginning of the Toronto series, where he gave up, I think, 6 or 7 goals in the first 2 games in Toronto or something like that, bounced right back, and he's been incredibly strong and consistent since. He was incredible during the Carolina series, particularly just a steady, calming influence behind these guys, and they all rave about just the confidence that they have in Sergei Bobrovsky, knowing that, God forbid, something happens, that they, somebody misses their lane or misses a route or something, an assignment's a little bit off. They know that Bob's back there and that most of the time he's going to make that big save. And that's really all you want in the playoffs, is somebody that you can rely on and somebody that's going to be consistent for you. And under Paul Maurice, Sergei Bobrovsky has been nothing short of that. He's been amazing. And if you have to pick a Conn Smythe guy at this point, and I know it's kind of a wide open race heading into the final, you almost have to lean towards the goaltender and Sergei Bobrovsky. So
that's what I was going to ask you is how much does this team rely on him? Scotty talked about their physicality, but how much does it come down to Bobrovsky's presence in net?
Oh, totally. I mean, Bob himself is just a stoic, quiet guy with that hardworking mentality. Players know what to expect from him. And I think that's kind of a big part of that confidence, is when like, I get to the rink at this time, I know exactly where Bob's going to be working. I know what tape he's going to be looking at. I know what he's going to be going through with Robbie Tallis, the goalie coach with Florida. He's just that calming presence in net. And the way that he's been able to raise his game to another level during the playoffs for the Panthers over the last few years, it's what teams covet. And it's just funny because when he first signed in Florida, the first few years, that $10 million a year contract with almost like an albatross, it wasn't a great, the systems that the team was playing, this run and gun rush style, was not very indicative to Sergei Bobrovsky. But when Paul Maurice showed up, they changed to defensive styles. They started cleaning up around the house. They started taking away second chance opportunities. Suddenly Bob is a Vezina guy again. So it's been a great collaboration with him and the defensive systems. And I mean, you're seeing it firsthand how awesome it can be.
How much does home ice advantage matter in a series between these two teams?
This year, maybe not quite so much, just because Florida has made it clear that they don't care whether they're on the road or not. They've been so good. I believe 8-2 on the road with a plus 27 goal differential, which is like unheard of for a road team in the playoffs. So, this would be the year, I guess, for Florida to not have a home ice advantage in the final the way they did last year, because that Game 7 on home ice seemed to play a big part in Florida getting back to their roots and being able to win that series last year. I don't know if it's going to play as big of a role this year, just because the Panthers have done such a good job of winning in other teams' buildings. And Edmonton, to their credit, they've been pretty solid on the road as well. They're not the Winnipeg Jets. They've done some good in other buildings as well. So I expect both teams will probably win in the other one's building in the series. I'm just travel-wise, I'm just hoping that I don't have to go to Edmonton twice. That's all.
So, David, 2-part question for you. Number one, what did you think when you heard that Utah was getting an NHL team? And number two, what did you think when they announced it as the Mammoth a year later?
I was excited when I heard about the move. I always thought that Utah had a great fan base, and I love it when the smaller markets that have been dying for hockey, well, not just hockey, but sports teams, but dying for a team. We've seen just the great reception that happened in Vegas. We saw what happened in Seattle, so I wasn't surprised at all to see it succeed the way it did in Salt Lake City this year. Selfishly, I really liked the Yeti name, so I was a little disappointed when we found out that couldn't happen. But I think the Mammoth is an awesome, awesome name. I love the logo. I can't wait to see what kind of marketing that they come up with and social media, because I think there's some really cool opportunities there. But no, it's exciting. I know you guys got former Panther Kevin Stenlund there, and he did some really good this year. You have some young talent. You're not starting from scratch, so it's an exciting thing for Utah. They were certainly in the playoff hunt this year. And it's always fun when a new team can have that kind of success right away and get those fans really locked in. So that's what I'm hoping for you guys. But so far, I've been loving it from a fan perspective.
That's awesome. Well, David, we appreciate your time. Have a good time covering this one. This would be a fun series to cover for sure. Hopefully it goes 7, because we're going to be watching every second of this thing.
No problem. Thanks for having me on, guys.
You got it. David Dwork covering the Florida Panthers for the Hockey News right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.